Every time you click, every share, every single thing you buy online, it all leaves a digital footprint. But who's actually following that trail? And maybe more importantly, what are the rules of the road here? Today, we're going to dive right into the complex and, let's be honest, often murky ethical world of our digital lives. Okay, let's get started. So let's start with something real. There's a company out there called Tapod, and they have built their entire business on tech that can link everything you do across all your devices. Just look at this diagram here. That ad you saw on your laptop this morning, yeah, that could be the exact reason you're now seeing a similar one on your phone. See, they're not just tracking a device, they are creating a single unified profile of you. And really, this is what it all boils down to, right? Is it ethical for a company to build its entire business on tracking you, often without you even having a clue that it's happening? This is the central dilemma we're going to unpack together today. All right, so to really get to the bottom of this, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the big picture, our digital dilemma. Then we'll zoom in on the price of privacy, decode the common digital threats we all face, look at how we can actually build digital defenses, and finally, we'll explore some frameworks for making better choices in the future. First up, Section 1, our digital dilemma. This is where we lay the groundwork and really get a handle on the core challenges we're all facing online. When we talk about digital ethics, it really helps to break it down into these 5 key areas. First, privacy. Pretty simple. Who gets to see your data? Then there's accuracy. Is the data about you even correct? I mean, think about it. A single wrong digit in your credit score could cost you a mortgage. Then, property. Who actually owns those photos you post online? You or the platform? Next, accessibility. In a world that's more and more digital, who's getting left behind? And finally, accountability. If an AI algorithm unfairly denies you a loan, who's to blame? Who takes the fall? And sitting underneath all those issues are these 3 core concepts. Responsibility is about owning up to the duties that come with making and using tech. Accountability is about figuring out who is answerable when things go south. And liability, well, that's the legal safety net that lets you seek damages when you've actually been harmed. These are basically the building blocks for any ethical system. Okay, so building on that, let's move into Section 2. We're going to dive deep into what is probably the biggest concern for most of us, the price of privacy. So what do we even mean by privacy in this digital age? Well, put simply, it's the right to be in the driver's seat. You should be the one to decide what information gets collected about you, how it's stored, and most importantly, how it's used by anyone else, whether that's a big company or a government agency. Now, what's really fascinating here is how all these threats are linked, like a chain reaction. It usually starts with an app collecting way more data than it actually needs. Then that data gets shared or sold. Then it might be used for surveillance or data mining to build this incredibly detailed profile on you. And the whole time, that data is just sitting there, vulnerable to being stolen in a breach. It's a whole chain of vulnerability, one link leading to the next. And this brings the whole issue right back to you. I want you to just pause and really think about this for a second. Do you actually know which companies are holding your data right now? What would you do if you found out your address was wrong in some database you can't even access? Who gives the final okay to share your personal data? These aren't just theoretical questions anymore. They are the urgent realities of our modern lives. All this talk about data being out there leads us perfectly into Section 3. Let's zoom out from just privacy to the wider world of security and start decoding the digital threats to our information systems. Think of information security as the shield that protects our entire digital world. Its job is basically to stop anyone from getting access who shouldn't, to stop them from messing with the data, and to make sure that the systems aren't taken down or destroyed. It's kind of like the silent guardian of our digital lives. Now, in the world of information security, the gold standard is something called the CIA triad. No, not that CIA. It stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality is about keeping secrets secret, like encrypting your emails. Integrity means making sure the data is trustworthy and hasn't been tampered with, which is absolutely critical for things like your medical records. And availability just means the system is actually up and running when you need it to be. The key thing to remember is you need all 3. A system isn't truly secure if you lose even one of them. It's like a 3-legged stool. Kick one leg out and the whole thing comes crashing down. So where do these threats even come from? Well, this chart really busts a common myth. We always picture these shadowy hackers in hoodies, right? And they fall under technical threats. But just look at the numbers. Human threats, things like an employee accidentally clicking a bad link or just simple carelessness, make up an equally huge portion of the problem. It just goes to show you that people can be just as big a vulnerability as any piece of software. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time outlining the problems. Enough of the doom and gloom. Let's talk solutions. In Section 4, we're going to look at how we can start building our digital defenses and the tools we can use to fight back. Security is a constant cat and mouse game for sure. For every single threat, there's a corresponding control. So the threat is a phishing email. The controls? Spam filters. And maybe even more importantly, training people to actually spot the fakes. For something devastating like a ransomware attack, having regular isolated backups is your absolute lifeline. And for someone just trying to log in as you, multi-factor authentication is that simple, powerful control that can stop them cold. And these controls, they all fall into 3 main categories, and they have to work together. Preventive controls are like the locks on your front door, things like firewalls and strong passwords that try to keep attackers out in the first place. Detective controls are your alarm system. They're the ones that yell, "Hey, something's wrong," when a breach is happening. And corrective controls, well, that's your emergency plan, how you restore from a backup and fix the damage after an attack. A really strong defense needs all 3 layers. And that brings us to our final section. We've looked at the problems, we've looked at the tech solutions, but technology is only one piece of this puzzle. How do we, as people, make the right human decisions? Let's explore some frameworks for the future. So when you're faced with a tricky situation, like that top-out example from the very beginning, you can look at it through these different ethical lenses. The utilitarian approach asks, does this technology create the greatest good for the most people? The rights approach asks, does it violate anyone's fundamental right to privacy? The fairness approach asks, does it treat everyone equally, or does it create new kinds of inequality? And the common good approach asks, does this really contribute to the kind of society we all want to live in? And here is a super practical guide for actually applying those ideas. First, just take a moment to recognize there's an ethical issue here. Then step 2, get all the facts. Don't just rush to a judgment. Step 3 is to evaluate your different options using those ethical approaches we just talked about. 4, make a choice, and then test it. Ask yourself, how would I feel if this decision was on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow? And finally, step 5, act on your decision. And, this is important, reflect on how it went so you can learn for next time. So we end right where we began, hopefully with a few more tools to tackle the problem. Look, the technology is going to keep changing, the threats will evolve, and the ethical dilemmas will only get more complex. The ultimate control, the final line of defense, it's not a piece of software. It's our ability to think critically, to be aware, and to make conscious, ethical choices. The real question is, what will yours be?